Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be painting a fishing boat scene. Fishing boats drawn up on a beach somewhere in Cornwall on a lovely sunny day, and it's going to be inspired by one of my favourite artists, the great Edward Seago. Seago often painted very sort of moody scenes, lots with beautiful fishing boats and things, so I'm basing these boats on some of his, but painting my own kind of beach and sky. I'm using Milford 140-pound knot or cold pressed paper. It's quarter imperial sheet. It's taped to my board, and my board is set at about 45 to 60 degrees tilt. I've wet it all over with my large bamboo Chinese haki brush, and I'm now putting in some fairly pale raw sienna across the sky and the beach, just to get some sort of background light colour in for a sky wash. This is cerulean blue. It's a nice, clean, bright summer colour, I find. I think it works really well with raw sienna and the white of the paper for nice, fresh summer clouds. Just sweeping the brush across gently. I'm very gently going across the paper here. I don't want to disturb the paint too much, and I want to leave quite a lot of white areas unpainted. I'm going to increase the look of those clouds by using a very clean and only damp 3/4 inch flat brush. It's a Cotman brush, and what I'm doing is I'm lifting out some of the paint back to the white paper, then cleaning the brush out on a tissue or a paper towel, and then lifting out a bit more until I get the shapes how I like them. It's all still nice and wet because the paper is cotton, so it stays wet for a long time. So as long as I don't do anything drastic, it should end up looking like a nice large Cornish sky with lovely blue sky and white clouds. So that's basically the sky finished. I'm just going to put a bit of cerulean blue across the bottom into the wet beach and the water, just to have that reflected, well, so that I can paint it like the sky is reflected in the sea. And I think that's about it for my sky. I just need to leave it to dry now. Right, my sky's completely dry now, and I've just penciled in a group of boats, basing them on one of my favourite paintings from Seago, but with a few little tweaks. Just having the boats looking like they've just been pulled up on the beach, waiting maybe to go out on the next tide. Now I'm going to paint in more of the beach around the boats using my Ron Ranson Pro Art Haki brush. I'm now going to change to my 3/4 inch flat brush. It's a Cotman, Winsor & Newton Cotman one-stroke flat brush, and just carry on with the same kind of marks, but this will focus them slightly more and add texture and sort of suggestions of the beach, shadows and shades and wet sand and things like that, as the paint then diffuses into the wet paint that's already been just put down on the beach area. So I'm getting some nice soft transitions and soft areas where everything is just blending together nicely, but still with some nice difference of colour. Again, like with the harky brush, I'm just mostly using the tips, the flat tips, and sweeping it horizontally from side to side. Trying to keep it sort of fairly flat under the fishing boats, although there is a little bit of undulations where the sand has kind of lapped up against the hulls where they are on the beach. Now I'm going to use raw umber, put in a sort of dark sand dune coming up here on the right, just a narrow suggestion of a sand dune at the back of the beach. Soften it off with a squirrel mop at the bottom so it's not too harsh, and that will hopefully blend in with the rock pools, puddles and sand and stones as I build up the beach. Putting a bit of Payne's grey in with the harky brush just for some shadow and form, just to maybe suggest some scrubby undergrowth on that dune. Some grasses, reeds, that sort of thing. Now I'm going to keep adding, just with the tips of the harky brush, I think it's a small or a medium Ron Ranson Pro Art harky brush, Payne's grey into the still wet paint of the beach and the edges of the tide line, just to add some shadows and start introducing some darks to the beach, because it's mostly mid-tone at the moment. Just going to use the corner of a plastic card to scrape out some just sort of lines where the sand has kind of left marks and traces, maybe where there'll be some suggestions of rocks and pebbles and stones and things. As I scrape out, just using the corner of this plastic store card, it moves the paint around, so I'm left with sort of light and dark marks, which I can then paint over or paint around to add texture to my foreground. Just the suggestions of maybe a few rocks and stones and things in the foreground. Right, now I'm going to think about painting in the boats, because I've allowed the beach to mostly dry. Now I've got a few small flat brushes. I'll have to see which ones feel the most comfortable for painting in these boats, because they're quite small, and I don't want to do too much detail. I want the flat brush to do most of the work. I think this one's a bit too small actually, because I'm having to sort of paint. I'd rather just put the flat brush into the area that I want it to be in, and then just sweep across in a single brush stroke, because that gives a much fresher finish. So I'll try this slightly larger one. I think this is about 1/4 of an inch. Yeah, I think that's a bit better for putting in these the darker parts of the boats. Just following my penciled in lines really, where I've shaded to show where I want the darker areas. It makes it a lot easier to paint if you can draw your boats in fairly accurately, including the areas that you want to be to leave the lightest and preserve the white, and areas that you want to keep dark. This is a mixture of Payne's grey with a bit of burnt umber, so it's not entirely black, it's just a really nice dark blackish brown. It gives me some nice darks and really enhances the boats as the focal point. I'm just going to put in the sort of the dark colour of the lower hulls and shadow where they meet the sand, but I think that flat brush is now getting a bit bulky just for what I want to do here, so I want to keep this edge nice and clean but with a little bit of shape to it, so I'm going to use a nice fine rigger. And then back to the flat brush again. I'm just trying to take my time, because while the boats need to look convincing as boats, I don't want them to be too detailed. I just want to have sort of shadow, tone and a suggestion of the shapes. Kind of using the shadow of these boats on the outside to sort of negatively paint in the shape of the other boats, if you see what I mean. So when I paint the shadows, then the hulls of the front boats stand out more. Just a little bit of shadow under the boats there. I don't want long shadows though, I just want them to be just confined to underneath the boats. Just going to suggest a bit of detail above the hulls of the boats, whether it's things like ropes and tackle and stuff in the boats, or small canopies, I'm not too sure. Just want it to suggest something above the hulls, like the cabins, that's the word I was looking for, not canopies. Now I'm using my flat brush. I'm going to carefully go over the mast next. Take your time when you're doing this. Try and get sort of semi-broken lines or slightly roughish looking lines. If your lines are too perfect, then they can stand out a bit too much. It's better to sort of suggest the lines with sort of lost and found edges, some small bits that are unpainted, other bits that are thicker. Just going to paint in these sort of cross verticals, which I think are sort of, I'm not sure what they are. There are booms for the masts where the sails aren't up. Put in some rigging with the rigger. Just going to keep it quite pale. That's a bit dark, that one, but hopefully once I've got the rest in, it should look okay. Again, with the rigging, quite fast lines, strokes with the rigger, lost and found edges, not too dark, not too obvious, just so it looks like a sort of tangle of ropes from a distance, and suggests the rigging rather than rather than overtly painting it all in. I'm just putting some bluish grey across the white area of the hulls, just to indicate a bit of shadow across there. Dab it out where things are maybe a bit too dark. Just need to now put some cerulean blue across the sea area and pull some more cerulean blue into the paler areas of the beach near the corners, just to look like rock pools with the sky reflecting in them. Very still, calm water in the rock pools or the edge of the sea. Just straighten that up a little bit more. So I get a nice straight horizon line. Now I think that's almost looking okay. I think it's nearly finished. I think I just want to put some finishing touches and some texture across the beach, and for this I'm going to use my rigger and some quite dark Payne's grey, and I'm just going to pull across some fairly random sort of lines, long lines, mostly horizontal or slightly diagonal, just pulling the brush from side to side, stopping here and dotting and dashing here and there, broken lines, dry brush, just to kind of add the suggestion of some texture, but without adding too many details. As I come closer towards the front, I should just detail in a few more sort of suggestions of rocks, maybe seaweed on the beach, that sort of thing, but nothing definite, just a few hints of dark tone to lead the eye into the painting. Just also helps to add, not only to add texture, but to sort of break up those those kind of passages of paint across the beach. Just going to darken up across the bottom a little bit more, just to sort of act as a sort of framing device to lead the eye into the painting. I think I'm happy with that. And I've thought about adding some seagulls to it, but I'm thinking to myself that I quite like it plain as it is. I'm going to pull off the masking tape, making sure that I pull the tape away from the painting so that if the paper tears, it tears away from the actual painting itself. And once the tape's removed, it's easier to see the painting as a whole, how it would look when it was framed. And I think it looks quite nice. I'm quite happy with this. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll try something similar, and maybe it'll inspire you to take a look, if you haven't already, at the paintings of Edward Seago, which are incredibly inspiring. Thanks so much. Please like and subscribe, and thank you so much to my patrons for your support. And please follow the link in the description below if you're interested in supporting me on Patreon. Thanks so much, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.